In this episode, Golden and I discuss Marvel's The Eternals. Full speed ahead.
The Omega Beam. Full power. The Omega Beam.
Welcome to the Omega Beam number 160. I'm your host, Oren Merton. So before Sony released the most recent MCU movie, Spider-Man No Way Home, Marvel released The Eternals, which featured a previously unmentioned superhero team. Well, we're a bit late to the party, but we finally have our discussion of it up. We start spoiler-free and give you ample warning before we start getting spoilerific. So let's go! I am here with Golden to talk about The Eternals, a Marvel movie that came out 3 months ago. We waited until it was on Disney Plus to watch it. It is probably the worst critically reviewed of all the Marvel movies, and it certainly bit off a whole lot. So what did you think of how they did it?
I think that it is probably my least favorite of the Marvel movies, and I think part of that is also that it seems very disconnected from everything else. Even Shang-Chi is connected. There's more of a connection there. And you can't even say it's a one-off, because it's not really a one-off.
Right.
It is still part of that universe. It's still supposed to tie in.
And it kind of changes the universe in a massive way, if they want it to.
With all the other Marvel movies, you start with Iron Man. Then you have Thor. Then you have Hulk. You have all these characters, and you get to
They're chapters
learn
in the same
about
story,
them.
right?
And then when you bring them together, you're already invested.
Right. Every character gets a movie.
And there's no chance really to create that investment so quickly.
Right. No, that's exactly true.
To create that investment when it's just one movie and you have a very large cast.
Yeah, I think there is a way to do that kind of a team-up movie where you don't introduce the team in advance. I think a perfect example of how to do that right is Hellboy, where you first are introduced to the new guy on the team.
But even that's
it's a much smaller team.
It's a smaller team.
Yeah, that's true.
I think having, as many as you do in this team, it's just difficult to make any sort of connection.
Right, and
you could maybe make a connection to one or two.
Right.
But I don't know that I'm that invested in the characters.
I totally get it. And I think a lot of the criticisms of the movie have been along those lines, that there's too many characters. You've never heard of any of them until now. And this movie has a lot of heavy lifting to do. It's trying to basically give you a dozen origin stories and a unified plot for those 12 or whatever 10 characters.
10 characters.
Yeah, but also, you're right, there's 10 Eternals, but then you've also got the character of Black Knight, the Kit Harington character, who's there.
But I'm talking about
the main Eternals, absolutely. I understand. But there's a lot of characters is the main point, and there's just no way to give fair shake to all of them. I would like to give...
And maybe they weren't confident enough to break it up.
Maybe.
I think breaking it up into a couple movies might have been better, because you would have a little bit more time to get to know them and to care about where it was going. Yeah,
I think you're right. I think that may have also been one of the reasons. I think the casting of this movie was wonderful, so I have absolutely no qualms with the casting.
The cast is great. The story had some substance. It wasn't surface level. There was a lot more going on. I really appreciated Sprite's journey. I'll say that because I don't want to say what happens at the end.
Right.
But
we'll get into spoilers later, but yeah, I think it's a good way to put it right now.
Think about the very end of it, and I had a big flash of the Iron Giant in my head instead of what actually is at the end.
Right. Yeah, so to just sort of wrap up the non-spoiler section, it's a beautiful movie. It's very well filmed, very well acted. Of course, the special effects are at the level of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They are wonderful. I don't think this is a movie that you're going to have to see to be able to keep up with the continuing Marvel saga. I think this was an outlier, and kind of whatever we need to know for future Marvel movies, they'll probably go over in the rest. If you're a completist, see it. it's not a bad film.
Well, that does lead the question of why was this important to the Marvel Universe?
Right, probably for the cosmic part of it. I'm guessing not for the individual Eternals.
Could it have been in a story in one of the other movies?
Well,
in 15 minutes or less.
I would actually say the opposite. I would say that, I mean, they couldn't have attracted the cast they attracted, I'm sure, but I think the Eternals could have been amazing if it were one of those 8-episode Disney Plus TV series.
Exactly.
Because you would have been able to have lots more character development. You would have got to know the characters over an extended period of time. And by the time main plot kicks in, halfway through or whatever, you'd be invested. And I think this would have made a great Disney Plus series. And maybe if they're going to continue with the Eternals, it will be as a Disney Plus series. I think one of the issues with making it a Disney Plus series is the fact that it's hard to get that level of a cast. I mean, there were many movie stars on this cast.
Yes. No, like you said, the cast is really great. And they did draw some actors and actresses from outside Game of Thrones.
Yeah, very true. So, yeah, I mean, I think this would have been a very difficult proposition to say to Salma Hayek and Angelina Jolie and all these others, we'd like to have you on, how'd you like to do 8, 9, 10 hours of a television series? They might not have been excited.
We may not have gotten those really high-end movie stars, but maybe we would have gotten other actors and actresses that still gave, those roles.
Right. And a better story, and we would have ended up liking the Eternals more in the end. Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, so that's the end of the non-spoilerific part. If you're into Marvel movies, watch it for your completest. If you like these actors and just want to see what they're up to, it's not a bad film. I know we're damning it with faint praise, but, there's a very high quality elements, even though of the Marvel films, this is definitely the weakest, I think. And even I know in the past, they were talking about how weak Iron Man 2 was, or Thor The Dark World was. But I think this is weaker than all of those, personally. All right, 3, 2, 1, spoilers. You had mentioned that there was depth to the story. And I agree with you, and I'd like to spotlight how one of the things I really liked about this film is it is a little bit more of a philosophical story in the sense that the core problem that we find out exists towards, thank God it's after an hour and a half a movie or whatever. This is not a fast movie. But one of the core conflicts is it turns out that the Eternals are robots. They're actually here to basically farm humans as food for a new celestial that will eat the Earth. However, that celestial will go on to create galaxies and billions and trillions of lives. So the question at the heart of it is a valid question. Do you save 8 billion humans and all the other life on Earth, but then stop trillions of lives from developing in a brand new galaxy? Or do you sacrifice the Earth and everyone and everything on it in order to allow a new galaxy and all of its teeming life to be born? And that is, I think, a valid choice. And different Eternals fall on different parts of that equation. One of the things I loved so much about, I think Kang was his name, the Kumail Nanjiani character, he goes off and says... Kingo, thank you. He goes off, he does not fight with the Eternals that want to stop the Celestial. He says, I agree with the mission, the ultimate mission, with that we need to sacrifice the Earth to do so. But I refuse to fight against my brothers, the other Eternals. And I really appreciated that he's loyal to his family. He loves his family. He's not going to get in conflict with them, but he's also not going to help them because ultimately he does think that is the right move, that is the needs of the many, the possibilities of the many outweigh the possibilities of the less many. I think this is a much more interesting philosophical debate than the sort of pop philosophy of Infinity War and Endgame, which are fantastic and way, way better movies. But the core at the heart of Thanos' plot is, I'm going to destroy half of all life so that the universe with its scarcity of resources will not be taxed. But that's an incredibly stupid idea, because then the other half will just grow again and they will just take over again. That's one of the questions people were talking about online after this movie came out was, well, why didn't they stop Thanos? And the answer is because the great Celestial knew that this was just a temporary setback, that it wasn't a problem. In fact, one of the people online who did a YouTube video about it, in latest Earth estimates, if we don't stop population growth, our population will double in less than 100 years. So basically, if you're an Eternal and you are, well, as the name suggests, eternal, what's 100 years? Let Thanos do his snap, and just it sets everything back 100 years. But that's fine. If you've been there for millions, what's another 100 years? So that was always like just a stupid solution to what he perceived as this major problem. But this is a real philosophical issue. I mean, they are literally stopping a galaxy from being born if they successfully stop this Celestial from being born. And so I thought that was interesting. Unfortunately, it wasn't interesting enough to sustain a over 2.5-hour movie the way they did it. But I thought that was interesting. On the other hand, to balance out the positive with something negative, the movie did get well-deserved credit for including a deaf Eternal. And, this was the first major Marvel superhero who had a disability, and that was wonderful to see. But at the same time, if they're all synthetic, why make it, if they're artificial beings, what was the point of making one unable to hear? What was the point of making one a child? And then ultimately, she, like you said, Sprite's journey was fun, but at the same time, why would you make a Celestial that is not an adult in their prime? Why would you do that? And it's not explained. It's not like we see the grand plan saying, well, we needed to have one who was a child so that children could identify with. No, there was none of that. But like we said, it looked beautiful. This is one of the only Marvel movies that was filmed majority outside. So it has a very different look to, the Russos, for example. Their Marvel movies are all sort of desaturated and artificially colored to help them tell the story they want to tell and all the rest. This is much more based in real Earth colors and Earth sunlight and things like that. It's an interesting look, I thought. So, I know this is one of the more negative discussions we're having, but at the same time, I don't mean to say this is a bad movie. I mean, there's certainly stuff to admire about it. And I love Kumail Nanjiani in pretty much anything he's in. I think he nails this one too. I thought Gemma Chan did a great job as Cersei, I think was the name of the character. I thought she really held this movie as kind of the protagonist Eternal. I thought she was wonderful. Kit Harington had only a cameo, but he was really fun to see, and I thought did a great job playing the Black Knight, who, don't miss the end credit scenes. It's kind of implied that he might be in the Blade movie in the future, and there's stuff to like about this movie.
So out of curiosity, thinking of things that I think you find interesting, did you find it interesting that it referred to DC characters?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. That it was interesting. And I remember when I watched it, when he said, oh my God, it's Superman. And I was like, oh, so I guess DC is canon comics. That in the Marvel universe, the Marvel heroes are, real, quote unquote.
Yeah, they reference to Alfred too.
Yeah, and the DC characters are the comics of the day. I thought that was nice. I thought that was a nice touch. I love to see that.
Yeah, if you enjoy the Marvel movies and you didn't get a chance to see it, you have access to Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's worth a watch. It's definitely worth a watch.
Agreed.
It's probably not one that I'm going to end up going back to several times.
Right.
But it definitely was a beautiful thing to watch, and it was nice to get to know some of these characters that I knew nothing about.
Right.
And curious how, if this is supposed to be the step into the next phase, how is it that, we know it's connected. Oh, well, Peter Quill, Father, Eternal, or Celestial.
Right.
And then he even said, as soon as you do this, if you're not you're giving up your power. You're no longer going to be eternal. You're not going to be a celestial.
Right.
So
yeah, I do think it, like you said, it will play in. I think the fact that the cosmos of the Marvel Universe has expanded to the point that now we've got this whole other, we've already expanded it on the TV side with the TVA and Kang the Conqueror and all the, the multiverse, all the splitting.
We're still pretty local though.
Yeah, this is much more local.
We know that there are spaceships, and we know that, through Guardians of the Galaxy, we've seen some other places.
Right.
Thor movies, we've seen a few places. We didn't quite see where Captain Marvel took them.
Right.
But where is that safe place?
Right.
We know that, Nick Fury is somewhere. He's just not on Earth. And I do think you're right. Had this been done as even just a 6-part series, I think it would have really changed it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I would not be surprised if this is it for the Eternals, because it was the least successful Marvel property.
Well, they may have plans for those characters later.
Yeah,
we just don't know.
Right. But I think there won't be another team movie. But if they do continue as a team doing stuff instead of just individual characters and other properties, yeah, that's true. But if they do continue with the Eternals in some sense as a team, I do hope that it's as a series where we can get more depth, more story, and really learn more than we could in this movie. So, yeah, kudos to everyone who did it. Didn't quite live up, but it was still fun. Well, thank you, Golden.
You're welcome.
And that's it for this episode. You can find the show notes at theomegabeam.com/160. If you like this episode, please leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Your reviews help people who like this stuff find our podcast. If you have any comments or suggestions, please drop us a line at info@theomegabeam.com. Be good to yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you next time.
The Omega Beam. Full stop.